Hello, clarinet friends. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here because today we're diving into an updated 2025 guide to the best clarinet mouthpieces for players of all levels, from beginners to advanced players. This video is extra special because I'm teaming up with the amazing Zac West, a professional clarinetist and teacher, to bring you a broader, more in-depth look at our top mouthpiece recommendations. Some of our picks may look familiar if you saw my video from 2023, but we've added new insights, fresh recommendations, and options across every price point, whether you're upgrading from your first student setup or looking for something more refined. And to make things even easier, we've put together a free downloadable PDF that includes both of our takes on the pros and cons of each mouthpiece, what playing levels they're best suited for, and where to buy them. Grab that PDF in the description box and let's get started. So hey everyone, today I have a special guest who's going to talk about different mouthpieces with me. Please welcome Zac West.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so
Hi.
happy to be here talking about this very important subject.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining us. Can you tell everyone sort of, what your background is in clarinet?
Sure. So I am a professional clarinetist based in the metropolitan Washington, D.C. region. I did my undergraduate at the Cleveland Institute of Music, where I studied with Frank Cohen, who's principal clarinet emeritus of the Cleveland Orchestra. And then I went on to do my master's degree at the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music, where I studied with Elie Eban, who's a retired member of the Israeli Philharmonic. And I have participated in a couple of different summer music festivals. I attended the Aspen Music Festival when I was in school and was also a fellow for the Sarasota Music Festival. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
That's great. Wow. So you know a lot about mouthpieces, about equipment for the clarinet. So I thought it would be great to speak with you and just sort of add your expertise to some of the clarinet models of mouthpieces that I've talked about before on my channel. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, for sure. Like most clarinet players, I've messed around with a lot of different equipment. So trial and error, we all kind of figure out how stuff works.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So in terms of cost, I always think that a beginner-friendly mouthpiece typically ranges from $30 to $100, and depending on the brand and the craftsmanship. So I think it's important, like investing in a quality mouthpiece, and I think it's worthwhile and it can serve you well into your intermediate playing years as well. Do you sort of agree with that philosophy?
Absolutely. And with my private students, one of the very first things that I recommend is upgrading the mouthpiece that came with their instrument, even before we go ahead and upgrade their instrument. It makes such a difference, as you know, you're probably familiar with or have been told. It's like the closer you get to your mouth on the instrument, the more important that thing is. And so the reed, the mouthpiece, even the ligature, really they make a big difference because they're so close to that thing that's vibrating, right? Well, I mean, the reed is the
Right.
thing that's vibrating, and it makes such a difference in the sound. And particularly for students who are forming habits, we want to make sure that they're forming good habits, and having equipment that is just not functional or is not at a level of quality that's going to support good fundamentals is definitely not a good idea. So we want to make sure that we have something that's really going to set them up for success in the long term. And just like you said, it's a little bit of an investment, but so many benefits in the long term for making that investment.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So I thought we put together a PDF to accompany this video, and I thought maybe we could just go down the line and talk about some of our favorite choices for beginners all the way up to maybe high school, even college players. And then also I'll leave Zach's information in the description box if you want to get in touch with Zach. And yeah, do you want to just go through the list and sort of talk about what we think about each mouthpiece?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're starting with the Hite Premier
Mhm.
mouthpiece, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is a classic. It's been around for a long time. I use this mouthpiece primarily for students that are just beginning on the instrument, who need something that's easy to play, that builds a good embouchure and good air support. It's relatively affordable. I mean, very affordable actually when we
Yeah.
talk about some of the other options, right? 25, $30, somewhere in there. And so for about the cost of a good box of reeds, you can have a mouthpiece that will really support you in the beginning of your playing.
Yeah, I agree. Usually the stock mouthpiece that comes with like a Bundy, like a beginner clarinet, usually those stock mouthpieces aren't the greatest. And I think if you can just invest a little bit of money in like the height, that's a good place to start. And like you were saying, we were talking offline that after a little while, once the student gets around on the instrument, it's you're probably going to need to move on to a better mouthpiece, as you get more advanced on the instrument. So I think
Yeah,
it's a really good.
oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say
Yeah.
maybe we could also add a little bit of information as to why the mouthpieces that come with the clarinet are not good,
Yeah.
right? Because that's not intuitive. You think,
Yeah.
okay, I am really taking care to get myself or my student a nice instrument to begin on. It's
Mhm.
not inexpensive, right? Even a
Right.
good quality beginner instrument is going to cost you
Mhm.
several hundreds of dollars at
Yeah.
least if you're buying it or you're paying a monthly fee to rent it. And yeah, and it costs, and you think, well, geez, if I'm spending all this money, and
Mhm.
why can't I use the mouthpiece that came with it?
Yeah.
It's just, unfortunately, the companies that make good instruments don't make good mouthpieces.
Right.
They have never really done that.
Yeah.
And if you have a mouthpiece that's poor quality like those, the reed won't sit properly on it. It will be very difficult to produce a good sound, and the student will have to develop some weird habits of compensating for that. Really, a mouthpiece need table where the reed touches mouthpiece needs to be totally flat. It needs to be out of a good quality material that's going to allow you to produce a good sound, and it needs to
Yes.
be designed in such a way where you can put air into the instrument and not be afraid of the sound that's going to come
Hmm.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I really think the height is a good place to start. Like if you don't know where to start, it's not too expensive and it usually is a good place to start for younger students, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah. And then next on our list is the Fobes Debut, and that runs anywhere between 30 to $44. And we're talking USD when we're talking about the price point. And actually on my previous videos, I had a lot of people in the comments talk about this mouthpiece. So I went ahead and ordered it, and it really is a really good beginner mouthpiece. So I actually like it slightly better than the Hite Premier mouthpiece, but again, it's just slightly more expensive. So, um, and I know you haven't tried it, right, Zach?
No, I think I'm the only
Yeah.
clarinet player in the world that has never actually tried a Fobes mouthpiece.
Yeah, me too.
So Clark Fobes is a very well-known mouthpiece manufacturer and produces mouthpieces from the student model all the way up to the very tippy top, best professional quality mouthpieces that you can get. And he has a really stellar reputation for the quality of his products, and he's a very well-known name in the clarinet world. And so I'm sure that it's a phenomenal mouthpiece, and I look forward to when I can try it. But certainly, from what I've heard from my colleagues, Phobes makes really great products.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that mouthpiece a lot, especially for new students to the clarinet, and you don't know where to start. I think that's a really good mouthpiece.
Now,
Um,
do you think, just one quick question about that,
yeah.
do you think if somebody is just starting out on the clarinet, do you think that the Phobes and the Hite are about as easy to play as one another? Do you find that one might require a little bit more effort at the beginning or anything like that?
Yeah, I think for me, for myself playing the two mouthpieces and from my students trying them, I think the Phobes is a little bit easier to play on. And
Okay,
the higher register, like the Clarion register, it speaks a little quicker than the
great.
high. But that's just based on my personal experience. Other than that,
Yeah.
I don't
So
have,
maybe a little bit more money, but
yeah,
maybe worth it to spend a little bit
yeah.
of extra
And I
money.
think you could probably play on it a little bit longer before moving up to a better mouthpiece from there. So,
Great.
yeah, I think it's a good investment. And then see, our next on our list is the Pyne Clarion. And I actually haven't tried this mouthpiece, even though I do the mouthpiece I play on is made by Pyne, but it's not this particular models. But I know you've played on it, right, Zach?
I have, yeah. I've had the opportunity to try this mouthpiece, and I was really blown away. So Pine has a great reputation for producing very nice quality mouthpieces. A lot of professional clarinet players, like you play on Pine
Yeah.
mouthpieces, and yeah, this for me, I had the opportunity to try this at a clarinet conference and was able to sit down with Kyle Pine or Kyle Pine.
Oh,
Kyle.
Kyle. Yeah,
Oh,
Kyle.
yes, Kyle
Yeah.
Pine. Sorry if you're watching this, Kyle. I always get confused. But anyway, so Kyle Pine, who is now the owner and the head mouthpiece maker for Pine Mouthpieces. And yeah, I had the opportunity to try playing on it. It's just really responsive, really nice, colorful sound. Supports a good air. I will say that they're just because the Pine mouthpieces are really handmade. I mean, like all
Yeah.
good mouthpieces are at least hand finished. There's a little bit of variance from one to the other, and so it would be really beneficial, I think, even more so than some of the other mouthpieces that we're going to talk about, to have the opportunity to try a couple of different ones because they're all going to have slightly different characters because they're being hand finished by a craftsperson who really is trying to find like the individual soul of each mouthpiece. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think it would be nice. I know you can order them directly from Pine. A lot of local music retailers carry them as well, and I believe you're able to do a trial with any of the Pine mouthpieces. And so, yeah, getting a couple on trial, playing with your teacher if that's something you're interested in. Also, you might be the only kid in class that has a clear mouthpiece. They are not black; they are clear. I'm in at a great value. I think similar price point to the
Yeah.
folk. Maybe a little bit more, maybe closer to like
Yeah.
$50,
I think
but.
it's like
Um,
$55. Yeah.
yeah, and certainly one that you could play a little bit longer, as opposed to the
Yeah.
Hite, which was the first mouthpiece we talked about.
So moving on to the Yamaha 4C, this mouthpiece runs between $40 to $66 currently in 2025. So yeah, this is a popular choice, I think, among band directors and just people who set you up on a beginning clarinet. I know that if you get the plastic Yamaha clarinet, doesn't it come with the Yamaha 4C in the
Yeah,
case?
I don't know if they still do, but they did back in the day when I had a
Yeah.
plastic Yamaha clarinet.
Yeah.
Definitely came with the 4C.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I don't know if they still do that, but if you do happen to get the plastic Yamaha clarinet, if you're starting, I would probably recommend you getting the 4C because it is paired well with that model of instrument as well. But
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the few we said earlier that most companies that make good clarinets don't
yeah,
make good mouthpieces, but I guess that's not entirely true. I think the Yamaha 4C is a reasonable mouthpiece to
yeah.
start on. Personally, I don't care for it as much as the Pine, or perhaps I would like the Fobes. I think it's a little bit harder to play. The
Hmm.
facing, which is actually the shape of the curve of the mouthpiece, is just a little bit more open. And so what that means is that you need to use a reed that's a little bit lighter, and you also need to have a slightly more developed embouchure because you're going to need to use more muscle to get a sound out of the mouthpiece. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of players that really like open mouthpieces. It's just, especially if you're just starting out and things aren't fully developed yet, it might be a little bit challenging, especially if you're a smaller person as well, and you don't have a lot. Especially if you're a kid and you're smaller and you don't have really big lungs, you don't have a lot of muscle development in your face yet, it might be a little challenging.
Yeah, I do find that mouthpiece for me, it's difficult to tongue clearly on it. But I do have a student who plays on a Yamaha clarinet with a Yamaha 4C, and she gets produces a really nice sound on that combination.
Good.
So yeah, I think it also sort of depends on the student and the player, and if that combination works well for them. So it's a
Yeah,
good option. It's under $100. And
right.
so next we're going to talk about the Vandoren 5RV. I know we're both fans of this mouthpiece, but did you want to talk a little bit about this model?
Yeah, this is a classic. It's been around for a really long time. I think it was one of the first Vandoren mouthpieces that came out, and Yeah, and so if you aren't familiar with the name Vandoren, it's a name that we say a lot in the clarinet world. They're very well known for manufacturing mouthpieces, reeds, ligatures, other clarinet accessories. They don't make instruments, but they specialize in just about everything else with the clarinet. And so you may find that as you start taking lessons, that your teacher recommends that you start using Vandoren reeds, for example, but Vandoren mouthpiece is also excellent. Really a great value for the amount of mouthpiece you get. It's going to cost more. All the Vandoren mouthpieces are going to cost more, ranging really about $125 for most of these models, and some of their newer models are closer to 140, 150. So it is certainly a bigger investment, but professional clarinet players use Vandoren mouthpieces, and so this is really something that could support you for a very, very long time. Mouthpieces don't last forever, and so you probably would need to replace it at some point. So you only want to plan a mouthpiece really for a couple of years before it starts to wear from just being in your mouth and getting a lot of use. And so, but yeah, no. So the 5RV is very middle of the road. It's just easy to play, produces a nice, colorful sound. Yeah, and it's just an absolute classic. Most people find that they can make this mouthpiece work.
Yeah, I have a lot of beginners when they're going from whatever mouthpiece they're on and they switch to the 5RV. It's just a total difference with how easy it is for them to just move around the clarinet through the different registers. And I would say, especially for beginners, it's really challenging for them to get like the altissimo notes out at first. And I would say
Mhm.
like a good mouthpiece like the 5RV is really gonna make a big difference if that's like a challenge for you in the beginning. So,
Yeah, and the one other thing I'll add is that the way that this mouthpiece is designed with that facing that we talked about earlier, which is the curve of the mouthpiece, is
mhm.
that you can use a really stable, consistent embouchure. And so you can just kind of set it and forget it a little bit. If everything is in the right spot and you just blow good air, you shouldn't have to make too many adjustments
Yeah.
throughout the range of the instrument, which is particularly helpful for students that are just trying to learn to be stable and not fish around all the time. It's really great for building that habit.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And then one thing I wanted to mention about commercial mouthpieces, like the Van Doren mouthpieces, there's some people, professional players who I've heard that will just buy a new mouthpiece every year because they just wear through it. They're playing so much, they wear through it so much. So they recommend replacing that mouthpiece every year. But if you're a
Yeah,
student, you probably don't need to replace it that often. If you're not
yeah,
playing like I don't know, 5 hours a day. And there's no reason to
right.
replace it that often. But well, that's great. So we wanted to talk about the Vandoren B45, and then Zach, you also want to talk about the Vandoren the B40 Lyre, which I haven't tried, but you're a big fan of that mouthpiece. So should we talk
Yeah,
about the B45 first? Um,
sure.
okay, yeah, I like this mouthpiece. It probably isn't my favorite of all the Van Doren models, but I do like to have my students try it just because I think it's a little bit more affordable than like the M13 Lyre. And it has more of an open facing, is that right? Or is it, yeah,
Yeah, the B45 is pretty open.
so that can sometimes be a little bit challenging for some players, but some people prefer to play on an open facing. So it just sort of depends on, what you're looking for in your mouthpiece, whether you choose this one. So do you have any other thoughts about the B45?
Yeah, I would caution people who are trying the B45 that it's very flexible, and so if you struggle with finding a consistent voicing, finding a consistent embouchure, the looking at a more open mouthpiece like the B45 might not be the best for you for learning those habits because it's gonna be very responsive to changes in your embouchure. And however, if you're interested in other styles of music that aren't classical, like you want to learn jazz, or you want to look at playing klezmer music, or you want to look at other styles of world music, a more open mouthpiece that's very flexible, you may find a lot easier to get that kind of sound and to do some of those things like if you want to do like glissandos and
Yeah,
things, and you want
like
to learn
bending
how
the
to do,
notes.
yeah,
Yeah.
like smear between the notes and
Yeah.
all of that, then a more open mouthpiece like the B45, or even going to like one of the jazz mouth, I think the only jazz mouthpiece that Vandoren has, which is the 5JB, could be an option. But if you're a student just starting out and you're in the kind of classical concert band orchestra track of things, then a mouthpiece like the B45 might not be the best thing for you to build those long-term habits.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Great.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about the B40 Lyre?
Yeah, so I think the B40 Lyre is a great mouthpiece for people who want some of the qualities of a more open mouthpiece, but it's something that's a little bit easier to handle. And so, as we've talked about a little bit before in this video, a more open mouthpiece generally will support a lighter reed and require a little bit more of a developed embouchure because you're just going to have to put more air into the instrument. It wants more air, and yeah, and it's going to demand a certain degree of strength in your embouchure to kind of control things. But I think the B40 Lyre is nice because you get some of that warmth and that roundness and the ability to take a lot of air, but it's a very stable mouthpiece. And so I feel like you can just have a good embouchure and put your tongue in a good position and kind of play. And it's also going to be a little bit, in my experience, a little bit more free blowing than the B45. It's nice. And for students that struggle with something, for students that struggle to play on a harder reed, who need a little bit of a lighter reed but want to have a more developed sound and be able to carry and, and have that warmth and some people will say darkness to the sound, then I think the B40 Lyre is a nice choice.
Yeah. Oh, great. That's perfect. So now let's talk about probably my favorite mouthpiece that Van Doren makes is the Vandoren M13 Lyre. And that price point is, I've seen it anywhere from like 125 to 140.
Hmm.
But I think this is a great mouthpiece. It like produces a beautiful warm sound. It has like an even tone quality across the different registers. And I mean, I think for the price, it's a good sort of, I would call it a professional model. I know a lot of
Oh yeah.
professional players that play on the M13 Lyre.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you're interested in using a heavier reed,
Mhm.
then this is what we would on the opposite side of the spectrum is this is a very close facing mouthpiece. And so
Mhm.
that means is that the distance between the reed and the mouthpiece is smaller, and so it can support a heavier reed without the sound getting fuzzy or being too difficult to play. So if you are messing around with mouthpieces and maybe normally you play on like a 3 or a 3.5. If you put that on the M13 Lyre, it actually might feel too easy. And so don't be afraid to go for a heavier reed. You don't want something that's going to be really hard to play or is going to sound breathy or airy, but this mouthpiece is actually designed for something a little heavier. So don't be afraid to pull out a number 4 and try it on an M13 Lyre. You're still going to make sure your reed is balanced and it's not warped and all of that stuff, but it actually that's an appropriate time to use a heavier reed.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good choice, especially if you have a high school student who's, really advancing pretty quickly and wants to maybe, go to college and study
Hmm.
music. I think that's a really good option for someone like that. So let's talk about the Van Doren M15. So this runs between 115 and $125. So I think this mouthpiece, I think it's pretty similar to the M13 Lyre. It maybe has like a little bit of a lighter sound or like just a more fluid sound, I would say. If you're looking for a really dark sound, I probably wouldn't choose this particular mouthpiece. But I think if you're looking for, a nice mouthpiece that sounds good, like in chamber settings and orchestral settings, I think it's a really good option. So
Yeah, it's really colorful. I like that a
colorful,
lot.
yeah.
It's a very colorful mouthpiece, and it's going to feel a little bit different than the M13 Lyre. Some people feel like it can take more air, and so if you feel like for me, I mean, I'm a bigger person. I have pretty big lungs, and so Well, I really appreciate the beautiful sound of the M13 Lyre. It's
Mhm.
just, it feels a little bit limiting for me because I put so much air into the clarinet, whereas the M15 retains a lot of those same sound qualities, but you can put more air into it, and it feels like it has a little bit more what I would call cushion to it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, yeah, it has a lot of color in the sound. Some people love that. I really like a lot of color in the sound. Some
Yeah.
people might think that it doesn't sound mellow enough.
Yeah. And I think the last one we were going to talk about today is the Vandoren M30 Lyre. That runs anywhere between 115 to 130. Um, and I don't know if you also want to talk about the BD5. That's another one I like to talk about, but that just occurred to me. But we can talk about the Vandoren M30 Lyre first. So this one I think has a really nice dark sound. I would say like that's the hallmark of this mouthpiece, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It has a very rich, very mellow sound. Um, it's it's pretty easy to play. I think it's pretty easy to play. It's a little bit more back to the open mouthpiece side of
Mhm.
things,
Yeah.
but it's still close enough that people who struggle to play on a mouthpiece like the B40 Lyre or the B45, for example, might be able to play on this mouthpiece. It will generally favor a reed that's a little bit on the lighter side, particularly around the edges of the reed. So if you're at the level where you're looking at a mouthpiece like the M30 Lyre, you really want to make sure that you've had some conversations with your teacher on how to adjust reeds and make them work for certain mouthpieces. Yeah, so something that yeah, we'll just take a reed that's a little bit more flexible and maybe has a little bit less wood around the edges. But I played an M30 Lyre like all through grad school. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a beautiful mouthpiece. I still have it as a backup, and while it is on the darker side of things, I think it still has nice color in the sound. It's like a very nice kind of Goldilocks mouthpiece. I think I may have written that on the PDF. It's like,
Yeah.
I know I said that about the M15, but it's true about the
Yeah.
M30 Lyre. It's like not too dark, it's not too bright, it's not too open, it's not too closed. It's just a very, very good middle of the road option that kind of has the best qualities of everything to play. And so if you find that you have a reed, like if you try to use a reed that works great on an M13 Lyre or on a M15 and you try to put it on a BD5, it's going to be really hard to produce a sound. So just make sure that if you are messing around with this mouthpiece, that you have something, a reed that's going to be more responsive. And then people do really well with it. And people play on this mouthpiece and sound gorgeous. I have a
Yeah.
student that plays on this mouthpiece and sounds like $1 million, and I can't make it work. But that's just the
Yeah.
way that we play the instrument. I mean, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that one of us is doing the right thing or one of us is doing the wrong thing. And I mean,
Yeah.
I might be doing the wrong thing. I don't know. But she sounds wonderful on it. And so it's all about personal choice and finding something that works for you.
Yeah, I think that's like the main takeaway I would say from this video is like there's not one perfect mouthpiece. You just need to find the right combination of mouthpiece, ligature, and reed. And like you were saying, the closer it is to your mouth, like that's the important stuff that needs to, you know, be chosen for you for the particular player. I think that's like the best takeaway from learning about mouthpieces, is there's not
Yeah.
one great mouthpiece that everyone should be playing on.
Right. I like to compare it to buying a pair of shoes, right? Just
Mhm.
because your friend wears a size 8 doesn't mean that you're going to wear a size 8, right? And so just because
Yeah,
your friend in band class plays a such and such mouthpiece and sounds amazing on it, if you go to try that mouthpiece and it doesn't feel good for you, you don't like the way you sound, doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just that it's not the right one for you, right? Just like if you were to put on your friend's shoes and they were way too big or way too small, nothing wrong with your feet. Your feet are fine, okay? You just have different
right.
size feet. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I always think it's a good thing to have a trial with a couple different mouthpieces just to see, you know, what your student likes or, you know, what you personally like. And I know you work with Lisa's Clarinet Shop, right? And so you guys do trials with that company, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lisa's Clarinet Shop is a professional clarinet shop that has been in business for over 40 years. Although it's based in Chicago, I live in the Washington, D.C. area and I'm an ambassador for the shop. So we work with clients all around the country and we're happy to set up mouthpiece trials for people. We deal primarily with Vandoren mouthpieces, and so if that's an option that you're looking for, we carry the full range of Vandoren mouthpieces and you can trial up to 3 mouthpieces at a time for up to 14 days.
That's great. Yeah, so I'll
Yeah.
leave all of that information in the description box, and then we'll also list it on the PDF that will go with this video. And we'll also do a trial test of each mouthpiece we talked about today. But thank you so much, Zach, for joining me today and just geeking out on clarinet mouthpieces.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah, so we'll have to do this again, but thanks
We
again.
will. I think so. And I look forward to hearing in the comments, people who try mouthpieces and what you think about them. Let us know. Always good to
Yeah.
hear feedback about what's
Yeah.
working for people, what their experiences are with these mouthpieces.
Yeah, totally. And I've gotten a lot of good recommendations just from people in the comments. So thank you for doing that and staying in touch with us. So thanks
Yeah, for
again.
sure.